Hi, I'm Andy Powell. Welcome to the Purpose Project. All topics are fair game. I hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, Happy New Year. Welcome to the Purpose Project. This is the first episode as the Purpose Project, and it is the first episode of the year. Still working on moving to video. This is the last episode that I have that is on audio only. And looking forward to all of January. Every week, I'm going to be releasing a new episode that has a local person, citizen, candidate campaigning for some sort of office. Some of them are competing against each other. Some of them are running for different offices. But you'll get to hear some good perspectives from different folks that are running in Arizona.
My name is Steve Zipperman. I'm running for the Arizona State Senate from Legislative District 1, which is all of Yavapai County, basically, and a little bit of Coconino. And I am sincere. I'm a veteran. I'm a patriot. This is my country, damn it, and they better not try to take it away from me. And I'm willing to fight to the death. I believe this is a great country. We can recover from this, but we have to change our way of thinking and our way of doing things. Founding fathers were some pretty bright guys. They knew that human nature sucked, and so they wanted to do everything in their power to stop people from taking power and using it against the people and people, elected officials. And so that's why we have three branches of government and all that.
Yeah, they planned for it as best they could.
Oh, they did a great job. There's just a couple things that they couldn't foresee. One of them has to do with the media becoming a multi-billion-dollar international conglomerate.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that was outside of their purview. They thought small-town newspapers would report on you as a politician if you did a bad job.
Yeah. And I was reading something yesterday, a letter written to Thomas Jefferson. In the letter, he was even referencing basically misinformation and the people being under a certain perception of what's happening in the government, and then having it be something totally different. So
no, we're blessed. Those guys handed us a legacy, gave us a lot to work with, and we're doing everything we can to flush it down the toilet.
Yeah, complacency is a powerful weapon.
Yes, it is.
Unfortunately. Well, cool. Well, welcome, Steve.
Well, thank you, Andy. I'm really glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's see. We're going to get into all kinds of different topics, but we'll start with the basics. Where were you born?
I was born in Los Angeles, California, and grew up there, and I never thought I'd leave. But I watched California go from Ronald Reagan conservative to woke, and it was a horrible thing to watch.
Yeah.
And I'm not happy with it. I wasn't happy with it, so I decided it was time to come to Arizona, and I've selected Arizona. I want to be an Arizonan. I love this place, and the last thing I would ever do as a politician is vote for anything to make Arizona like California.
What made you pick Arizona?
Well, at the time that we moved here, my wife of 30 years had passed away, and my mom was on hospice at the time, and so we had to be close enough to take care of her, and she owned some property, take care of her properties. They were rentals, and so I had to be close enough to get there and be able to take care of those things. And what wound up happening is I wound up going back and forth with my wife. I got remarried, and my wife and I decided we wanted to come here to Prescott. She had owned property here before, and my previous wife and I had just been here several times, decided that Prescott was the place for us. And it was just a matter of time. Sometimes you can't clear everything off your desk. Well, when my wife passed away, that was one of a series of things that allowed me to close my law practice. I worked out of the home. And so basically I closed down my business and retired and came here.
Right on. And you picked Arizona because you had been here before and your wife had property here.
She did before I met her. She didn't own it when I met her,
Okay.
but she was familiar with it, and we both had talked and considered. We talked about moving to Prescott, and what happened is, right after we got married, I brought her to Prescott, after a trip to Sedona.
Yeah.
I said, "Hey, there's a place I want you to take a look at. I've considered moving there several times." Her response was, "I used to own property here in Prescott Valley,
Yeah.
and it's a really good place, and I've thought about moving there too." So that was the beginning of the thing. And my mom was in hospice. We were going back and forth like a ping pong ball. A lot of people have that experience. And then my mom passed away, and it was permanent.
Yeah.
So
And what about Prescott did you like?
I love the people. I love the environment, the temperature, the weather, the seasons.
Yeah, you can't beat it.
The people here are very different in the way that they look at things. They don't think like Californians think. And it's a conservative place where those of us who believe in the Second Amendment can participate, can carry, and the government doesn't seem to be hell-bent on taking that right away from the people.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot more as I've gotten involved with politics, but
Yeah.
the things that drove me here were the freedom. And
Yeah.
I think that Arizona has a free spirit.
It does. Yeah. The Wild West. It's like night and day compared to whatever's going on over there in California. It's hard to put words on what's all the craziness, but
I get ill when I go across the border.
yeah. I bet. And you were in the military. Is that right?
I was. I served in the United States Army. I went in when I was 17. I enlisted right after high school. And the Army pretty much gave me everything. It taught me how to think. It taught me how to set goals for myself and to achieve those goals. And then afterwards, the GI Bill paid for my education. And I was able to do very well as a result of my time in the military. It focused me. As a teenager, I thought I knew everything. And they taught me very quickly that I didn't know anything.
Yeah. How long were you in?
I was in for 3.5 years on active duty. And
What was your MOS?
I was first an X-ray tech, and then I was a nuclear medicine technologist. And I worked at Walter Reed for 2.5 of my 3.5 years on active duty.
What do you do as a nuclear medicine technologist?
Well, the way that it works is that certain chemicals go to certain organs in your body. I'll give you an example. Sulfur, the liver pulls it out of the bloodstream as it goes through. It filters it out. So if you tag chemically sulfur to a radioactive material, typically technetium-99 metastable, if you make the two of those bound together chemically and you inject someone with that compound, it will go to the liver. And while it's there, then you take a picture with a camera. It's a gamma camera that takes pictures of the distribution of radioactive material in front of the camera. And if there are normal functioning liver cells, you'll see an area where the radioactive material has been taken up, and that will glow. But if there's cancer, that's not normally functioning liver tissue, it won't pull the sulfur out of the bloodstream, so you wind up with a hole.
Wow.
And so it's evolved a lot over the years, but that's basically the theory. Same thing with bones, bone scans. Bone is always being formed in your body, and bone is always being destroyed in your body. And so they give you the basic building blocks of bone formation, tag them to radioactive material, inject them, and then take a picture of the distribution. And if you have something that's eating the bone, that's not normal bone activity.
Right.
So it will be a hole in the bone.
Okay.
And so that's the way it works. And it's really exciting stuff.
Wow. That's pretty fascinating. I didn't know any of that. I also actually joined the military when I was 17. Did about 4 years as a scout, did reconnaissance. And that was good stuff. Now, you also practiced law for 37 years?
27.
27.
28 years I practiced.
Right on. What does that look like? Because you take the bar exam and you become a lawyer, and then what? You pick a specialty?
Well, I worked my way through law school in the hardcore gang unit of the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. My first appearance in court, I was trying to put a bad guy away, and it was for 9 counts 9 counts of attempted murder and 8 counts of witness intimidation. And he was held to answer for those crimes. And I was a certified law clerk. I was able to go into court and do those things. I learned a lot about the system, got a lot of very valuable courtroom time. And then I worked. I used to say that it depends on who you meet in an elevator, what your career is going to be as a lawyer, because you bump into somebody and you go, oh, what do you do? They ask you, oh, I just graduated from law school, passed the bar. I did pass the California bar the first time I took it, which is not normal.
Okay.
There are a lot of people that don't make it the first time. And then after I became a lawyer, after I was sworn in, I went to work for a medical malpractice firm defending doctors and hospitals against medical malpractice lawsuits. And that was highly technical, but I learned how to be a really good lawyer. Between the courtroom experience that I already had from the DA's office, then I was able to get a lot more of the finesse. How do you do the paperwork? And I worked up cases for another guy that took all these cases to trial. And I learned how to be a very good lawyer working in that firm. We had 88 lawyers. It was a good, nice, big firm.
Wow.
And great place to learn. And then after about 2.5, 3 years, I decided to go out on my own.
Right on.
And I had an office that I ran and operated in Newport Beach, and did that for 6 years. And then my lease expired, and they wanted to triple my rent. So I said, maybe I should buy a bigger home with an office and work out of the house. And that's what I did for the rest of the time I was
Nice.
out there. I did a lot of real estate and business stuff. I have an MBA as well.
As far as in law, or just separately as business?
No, as a lawyer, a lot of business owners would consult with me because of my business background and my experience. And so they have a problem. I was the first guy they called. And as a result of that and practicing law, I really consider myself to be an executive level problem solver. I solve a lot of difficult problems, negotiate solutions, negotiate contracts, did a lot of that. So that's basically what a legislator does. They read and they understand the law, hopefully. Most of our legislators here in Arizona are not lawyers.
Yeah.
And that's a problem because they don't know the words and how they're used in the real world.
That's a good point. So if it's medical malpractice or if it's real estate stuff, not only do you have to know the contractual side of things, but you also have to know a little bit about the business and about the let's say the claims that somebody's making against a doctor or against a hospital.
All of that.
Yeah, you have to know a wide range of stuff in order to get the full scope of what's happening in those cases.
Well, that's true. Before law school, I owned and operated a Century 21 office in Southern California. So I had about 50 agents working for me. And that gave me an opportunity to learn a lot about real estate. So it's been an evolution from the military. I've done a lot of different professions. I've done a lot of different things people spend their whole lives doing.
Yeah.
And I get bored easily. So I just moved progressively into bigger and better things and got to be a lawyer and then applied all this stuff that I'd gathered over the years. It was pretty cool.
Right on. What percentage of cases would you say you won throughout your time?
Well, most everything settles. That's a practical reality because the courts don't want to have to try all the cases that are filed. It would cost a gazillion dollars,
Okay.
and it would take way too much of their time, and they don't have the personnel or the money. So probably 95% of all cases across the board for any lawyer settle. And the ones that I did, I had one really big case. It was a 3-week jury trial in Orange County. I had others, but this was the biggest one. And I represented 3 executives in the computer industry, and they had been cheated, and I won a $760,000 verdict. The guy on the other side, the lawyer on the other side of the case, was a professor at Bolt Hall, which is one of the best law schools in the country. And he said, I will come down there and I will show you how to try a case. And he was destroyed in trial. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how courts work, about how judges think, about the way the system operates. I also was sworn in to practice before the United States Supreme Court. I was sworn in D.C. in the Supreme Court by Justice Rehnquist. So I've got a lot of things under my belt, a lot of experiences that are applicable to things
When you swear
still.
in, is that similar to the same oath you take in the military, or is it a different oath?
Well, I remember my military oath very well, and it's something that I take very seriously to this day. It never goes away, and it's you're swearing to God. The last words of that oath are, "So help me God." So I take it very seriously, and I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We all know who the foreign ones are, but it's a surprise to a lot of people how many domestic enemies we have in our own government. And it really gets me. So that's one of the motivations for me to get up and take on this. Running for office, you put a big target on your back, and I'm
So,
ready.
so what's the difference between that oath in the military and then the one you took in D.C.?
Sorry.
Oh, it's
The
okay.
one in D.C. it's basically to uphold the Constitution of the United States. It's very similar.
Okay.
It was in a group setting. It was a formal experience inside of the Supreme Court. All the justices were there. Sandra Day O'Connor, who just passed, she was there.
Hmm.
And it was a little bit different composition of the court. Scalia was there. These are some, pretty big names. Most
Yeah.
everybody knows who they are.
Yeah. Oh, well, I wish I'd have known that. I'd have made more questions about court stuff. There's a whole road we can go down on all that.
I would hate to have to come back.
Oh no, no, you should definitely come back. Let's see. Okay, so then another thing that you do that you've been doing for the past 5 years, I believe, is teaching a class about the Constitution.
Yes.
And that's just a class that anybody can sign up for to learn more about the United States Constitution. And more recently, you're teaching about the Arizona Constitution specifically.
Right. I can give you some details.
Yeah. So, I mean, what makes you want to teach the Arizona Constitution rather than the federal any longer?
Well, let me get into why I taught the U.S. Constitution, and then I'll
Sure.
talk about the Arizona one.
Cool.
The U.S. Constitution, we were sitting in our home about a block from here, and my wife turned to me. She was reading the paper, and she said, "There's a Constitution class that's available. You want to take it? It's at the library." And I turned to her and I said, when we moved here, which was only about a month earlier, we cut off all of our roots. We don't know anybody here. We have no friends. We're isolated. We need to make some friends. Let's take the class. As it turns out, we did take the class, and while we were there, we met some really cool people, very conservative individuals, and we got to know them very well. It's a 12-week, at that time it was a 10-week program. And so we went through the 10 weeks, and about halfway through, my wife and I were sitting there, and the instructor said, "I'm thinking about going in a different direction and developing a different course. Would anybody in the class like to take over this Constitution class?" And I looked at my wife. She looked at me. We both grinned and said, "Yeah, let's do this." We both have a teaching background, so that wasn't a problem for us at all. And little did we know how that would transform us. What wound up happening is I started doing the class with my wife. It was based on Hillsdale College's DVD set. They have a really great program online. I strongly encourage everybody to take Constitution 101. It's one of about 15 or 20 classes. There may be even more, maybe closer to 30 now, classes that are available for free online. They take your information, but they don't charge you anything. And you can sit through what was a 10-week class is now a 12-week class. So we had to redo all the materials. And
Probably for the better.
well, yeah, but we supplement the materials from Hillsdale College. We believe in Hillsdale. They're a great place. And they're very conservative, and it's one of the only places that anybody should consider sending their kids to college if they're college bound. But what we did is my wife and I both supplement with other things that we've found, articles, other types of information that we can come up with, reproduce it for the students in the class, and then send it to them by email before the class, show the video, and then talk about what the issues are that were discussed in that particular class. So it's very engaging, and almost everybody that's gone through the class winds up creating a social network for themselves, kind of like Sharon and I did when we first came here. They meet people, they like them, they share contact information in the class. 12 weeks, you get to know people pretty well.
Yeah.
And so it's created this big network of people, and a lot of the people that are supporting my campaign have been in that class, and they've seen me in front of the class for 24 hours.
Yeah.
And you get a pretty good feel for whether people are BSing you or whether it's the truth and sincere. And so we have a lot of friends, and some of our friends today are the same people that we met when we took the class.
Yeah.
We still interact with them. We go out to dinner. We have a great time. The people that are drawn to take a Constitution class in the Prescott Valley area are stellar. And we've had very few problems with anybody ever in any of the classes. We taught initially at the library. We had to move it because of availability. We've taught at Touchmark. We've taught at the VFW a couple times down in PV. And so we move it around. And it's been very well received.
It's great that people see a need to take that class and to educate themselves on that, especially right now.
Sharon and I feel like we are basically like the Founding Fathers. We're spreading the gospel according to the Founding Fathers.
Yeah.
This is what they said. This is why they said it. This is what's happened since then to destroy what they tried to set up. And we're all about sharing the information. We don't make any money on the class. We just want people to know.
So when you have Marbury versus Madison saying any law created repugnant to the Constitution is null and void, how does that fit in? Because I look around and I see dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of laws that are repugnant to the Constitution.
Yes. Well, people don't understand, and being a non-lawyer, that's perfectly understandable. But when you work with the law a lot, what you see is that if they pass a law today, and that law is definitely unconstitutional, or I'll give you a better example. It isn't really a law, but it's similar. The January 6th defendants, okay? They're violating their laws left and right. That was an assembly to redress grievances with those people's government. There may be some people that got violent. Okay, lock them up. But give them a lawyer. Tell them what they're charged with. Don't put them in a dungeon. And so I see that as a violation of the Constitution. But it stands until they file a lawsuit, and it goes through the trial court, and then through the appellate court, and then through the Supreme Court. Once it gets to the Supreme Court, it takes a year or two before they come down with a decision. So, and they don't hear everything. So until somebody at that level reverses what was done, then it survives.
Meanwhile,
it's
these
on the
people's
books.
lives are being completely ruined.
Exactly. And the same thing with a lawsuit, or a law that's passed. You may see some language that's definitely unconstitutional, but it passed the local legislature. Until it goes through the test of time, you file a lawsuit. First of all, you have to have the will. Second of all, you have to have the money and the determination to stick it out and not settle at a lower level.
Yeah.
You've got to take it all the way up to the Supreme Court. They have to agree to hear it or not before you know whether or not that was a constitutional or unconstitutional law.
Seems like a pretty major issue.
So the unconstitutional stuff stays on the books until it doesn't, until you challenge it.
Oh, that's demoralizing.
But that's the way the system has always operated.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that is not just, in my opinion. So how did you go from that Constitution class into the Arizona Constitution?
Well, I decided that I didn't know anything about the Arizona Constitution, being from California. I went through high school there, went through college there, and all the history that I was exposed to was either United States or California. So I knew a lot about Sutter's Mill and finding gold there and things like the gold rush, all those things. Didn't know anything about Arizona history. So I went on a mission and I started looking things up, things that were interesting to me, historical facts about Arizona. And then the Constitution itself. The Constitution of Arizona is very different from the United States Constitution, and at the same time, it's almost identical. There are, for example, there's a clause in there that says that we have three branches of government, and they shall stay out of each other's way. They're independent, and they aren't supposed to make decisions relative to the other branches. Just almost identical to the clause in the U.S. Constitution. The problem that you have is in Arizona, there are a lot of other things. I'll give you an example. It's laid out totally differently from the U.S. Constitution. Both have a preamble at the beginning, and then both of them have their articles, and they talk about the branches of government, okay, and the rights that people have, perfectly similar. And then at the end of the U.S. Constitution, you have a series of amendments. And the First Amendment, we all know, right to speech, religion, assembly. Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. And you can go all the way through. The first 10 are the Bill of Rights, and they're found at the end of the Constitution. And there's 27 amendments that are all in order after it. So if you go to a current version of the Constitution of the United States and you look at the amendments at the end and you see 27 of them, you can go, yep, that's a current version. Let's use this for whatever we're going to use it for. The Arizona Constitution, however, it's very easy to amend, to make amendments. So we have a lot more amendments than the U.S. Constitution, but we don't put them at the end. We bury it inside. Like, for example, I'm going to amend this clause in the Arizona Constitution. They strike out the words that are no longer valid. They put in the new words that belong there.
Oh.
And so all of the amendments are buried. The language isn't identified as an amendment. It's just that's what it is now.
So if I wanted to see the initial to the present day, I'd have to have multiple iterations of different writings to tell the story of how that change happened.
Correct, and that's almost impossible. So there is a solution for most of this. If you have an issue and you want to know about the Arizona Constitution, azleg.gov, azleg.gov. That site is amazing. And if you look at the Constitution that you'll find, that's the legislature's website. There's a Constitution section that you can find, and it has a search bar with a magnifying glass.
Oh.
And if you know the subject matter of what you're looking for, you can put it in there. Very rudimentary, a couple words that you know fit. Hit the enter key, and it comes up. Everything that's current, if they make an amendment today, it's amended today.
Okay.
So it's always current, and you always know you can count on and rely on what's there at that location. But the books, as soon as the books are printed, they're obsolete.
Well, that's great. Thank you. We'll move into a different subject now.
Sure.
Okay, so you are running for state senate.
Correct.
All right. What is the difference between a state senator and a federal senator?
Well, there's a lot of difference. The legislature of the United States is the big one. That's Congress. The legislature of the state of Arizona is for local issues. And the Constitution provides that the federal government, Congress, has the right to pass laws that affect everybody. But in areas where they haven't taken it upon themselves to write all the laws and to capture that area of the Constitution, the states are free to write laws. And if they don't, then the people are free to do what they want. So that's basically the way that it works. And the legislature in Arizona is much smaller. And, for example, Legislative District 1 is 85,000 square miles. And that's where I'm running. That covers from Ash Fork down to just north of Wickenburg, over to Black Canyon City, and then north through Verde Valley and Cottonwood and Sedona up to Ash Fork. If you draw a big circle around that whole area, that's the area that I'm running for.
The best part of Arizona.
It really is. But
But
one senator represents that entire area.
Oh, really?
And it's based on the demographics.
That's a big job for one person.
I testified 3 times in front of the group that they call the Redistricting Commission back in 2020. And they decide where those lines are every 10 years based on the census. So we were talking about, initially they had a line drawn that would have cut the Verde Valley out of this district and made it part of a different district, but they belong in this political area, and they're fairly conservative. They didn't want to be joined with a bunch of liberals, so that's part of the reason that it was done this way.
Would you mainly be writing laws or voting on laws that have been written, or both?
The way that it works is, as a legislator, you have 2 houses here in Arizona. You have the Senate and you have the House. And the House has basically twice as many members as the Senate does. And they write laws. And one of my pet peeves, forgive me, is that the people who are representing the state of Arizona in the legislature are not lawyers. Now, I hate lawyers. I've worked with terrible, aggravating, money-grubbing, difficult lawyers.
Yeah,
Smart, but difficult.
They're a breed of their own.
Okay? But that being said, if I'm in jail and I need help, who do I call?
Someone who knows the law.
If I need a contract written and I want to make sure that nobody's going to take advantage of me, who do I call? So having a lay person in the legislature, which is what almost everybody in the legislature is, I think there are 6 lawyers who are in our legislature right now, in both houses, total. And what happens is lay people don't understand the language. I've negotiated thousands of agreements, thousands, literally. I understand the language. I've studied the language. I've used the language. And
would this be syntax?
Well, it's not only syntax, it's the meaning of the word.
Yeah.
And so there are certain words that they're called term of art. They're terms of art. They deal with very specific, why are lawyers so complicated? Why are laws so complicated? You should just be able to read it and know what's in it. That's the way I think. But sometime when I want you to sit down with a pencil and a piece of paper or a computer and write out a law, any law. Let's say stopping for a red light. Where do you stop? How long do you have to stop?
Yeah.
Can you stop? There are a million different. Is there a limit line? Is there a curb? Is there a sidewalk? As you start looking at it, in law school, one of the exercises that they gave us, it's pretty interesting. They said, write a law, and then, okay, so we each went out and wrote a law, came back the next day, give it to the person next to you. Now, your job is to find holes in the law that they just wrote. And it's like, okay, you could drive a truck through this. And it's because that's how you learn about how the laws should be written, what needs to be included. It's one of the reasons lawyers are so complicated, and why dealing with them, if you ever try to negotiate anything with them, it's hard, because they're looking for very specific things that they want to put blocks there to prevent certain things from happening, or they want to create an avenue where other things will happen.
And there's so many different circumstances to consider in any situation.
So you start adding on every time you come up with an exception. Okay, so let's do this. This is a Band-Aid to fix that problem. And as you go, you start out. I had an interesting experience along those lines. I was in the library in California in law school, and I picked a law book off the shelf, and it was from 1850. Now, that's about the time that California was a state. It was right after it became a state. The entire law book was about 1.5 inches thick, and it was probably about 10 inches high and about 8 inches wide. Every law in California was in that book. And then somebody tried to hurt somebody else, so that it got a little bigger. And then somebody tried to beat somebody else out on a contract, so it became a little bigger. And as time evolved, by the time I was getting out of law school, they had these books. They were always blue. They came from West Publishing. And they took up an entire wall, ceiling to floor, 30 feet wide. And now it's all on CDs or online. They can get it that way. But it just gives you an idea of the evolution of the law over time. Things get more and more complicated as somebody tries to beat the law.
Right. And it seems like human beings are trying to, well, at least in some areas, are trying to legislate perfection and peace and this perfect world that
Can't do it.
It can't be done. But in the meanwhile, they're making more and more laws to try and pick up the slack that they left over from previous ones, which is putting handcuffs on the people in a way.
I've seen a really bad tendency, and I don't know if you've seen it or not, but I don't want to mention names, but I will tell you that there are a lot of legislators, and you don't have to go very far to find them, who like to promote themselves. Hey, I wrote a bill to do this. I wrote a bill to do that. I wrote a bill to do that. They're trying to get reolected. But when you look at the bills didn't pass, or they weren't effective to stop what they really said they were. They're misleading.
Yeah.
They're lying to the people. And so a lot of the laws that are passed are to get these people attaboys so that they can get reelected. They're not designed to do what they're supposed to do.
Man.
I really respect the couple of lawyers that I know that are in the legislature. One of them is Alex Colladin. He's in the House. The guy is brilliant. And what happens is regular lay people that go into the legislature, they rely on a thing called legislative counsel. This is the attorney for the legislature. And the legislative counsel actually puts words to the bill. And the legislator might go in and say, I want a bill that says this. And then the council comes up with that bill and writes it all out. And I don't believe in my heart that the legislators understand what they're given back by the legislative council. They take it at face value. Oh, I told him to do X. He must have done X. Let me go get this bill passed. There's a lot of holes, and they don't even read all the bills.
Right.
So
yeah, that's a major issue.
That's something I'm committed to do. I understand the language. That's a big benefit of electing someone like me.
Yeah, it probably takes less than half the time to actually read through some of these things.
But I understand them, and that's
exactly
the power. And I feel like our lay people in our legislature, they do the best they can. I'm not faulting them for it, but they're not as capable because they don't have the skill set. And I've spent many years developing that skill set.
How long is a senator's term, a state senator?
2 years.
2 years, and then you can get reelected?
You can get reelected up to 3 times, but what I've seen is a lot of these guys, when they're about ready to term out, they go to the other house. So if they're a senator, they go to the House. If they're in the House, they go to the Senate.
Go figure.
So,
so you're running for state Senate as a constitutional conservative. That's the phrase, or the party.
yes.
So what would you say the difference is between a constitutional conservative and a libertarian?
Libertarians want government off their back, and they don't want decisions that are going to interfere with their lives. I get that, and I'm very empathetic with libertarians. Constitutional conservative is somebody that the founding fathers were right when they set up this country. I don't know if you know much about the history. I think you do. But our founding fathers were absolutely brilliant young men. They were all about 20, 24 years old.
That's crazy.
They were nuts, okay? But they got a classical Christian education. They were taught to read by reading the Bible. And they went from there, along the way, to Plato and Socrates and Aristotle and Kant, and they read all of the philosophers of their day and previous to them. They were brilliant men. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense because they weren't distracted by television or headphones or telephones.
Any technology.
They weren't distracted with all that stuff. So as a result, what did they do? Well, they went to the pub with a tankard of ale and they debated ideas. And they were talking about the philosophers of the time, people like John Locke. And John Locke was very influential to the founding fathers in going forward with the Constitution and the way our country's set up. So when I look at that stuff, I think it's really important. I'm a constitutional conservative. What I noticed in my last run, I ran for this office one time before. I lost by a whisker, very, very close. And I was an unknown. My opponent was very well known.
Yeah.
And what I found was I would go somewhere to speak to a group of people, and I would announce myself as being a constitutional conservative. And then the next person that came behind me, also running for an office, announced that she was a constitutional conservative. I don't know that she's ever read the Constitution, but I found it offensive. They stole that label that I'd basically created for myself. And the truth is, I know the Constitution. I've studied it. I've studied the Founding Fathers. They were right about almost everything, specifically human nature. They understood people and what drives them.
So is it safe to say that the libertarian wants the government to be kind of out of the way, off their back, and the constitutional conservative wants to use the government as a vehicle to do things?
The Founding Fathers' view of the way government should work is what most constitutional conservatives would be consistent with. They wouldn't have any trouble with that. There are a lot of things that have changed since the Constitution was written, but those guys were pretty darn smart. And they knew human nature was such that people would try to take advantage once they got into office, and they tried to prevent that every way they possibly could.
Well, I ask because I would consider myself to be like a conservative-leaning libertarian, right? I hold the Constitution in extremely high regard. I think they were right. I think they were brilliant. I agree with you. But I'm trying to figure out what would the difference be on a political spectrum between a constitutional conservative and a libertarian. Because in my mind, they're like the same thing.
They overlap quite a bit. And one of the problems that you have there is that labels aren't always meaningful. Mm-hmm. They get in the way. If you call yourself a libertarian right now, and then you go register for the Libertarian Party, what are your chances of getting your guy elected for president?
Yeah.
So constitutional conservative is more consistent typically with the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. Most conservatives would never vote Democrat.
Yeah.
And so they go to the other extreme, which is Republican, which also isn't doing their job right now. Mm-hmm. So, but if you have a choice, Democrat or Republican, it's clear that Republican is closer when you have a conservative view of the world. Libertarians, they'd rather not have police. They'd rather not have government offices. We don't need a DMV. We don't need, there are things that aren't necessary. I tripped up a libertarian who came to a college class when I was in school, and he said, yes, this is the best form of government, less interference in our lives. And I said, yeah, I agree. Who's going to print the money?
Well, the Federal Reserve is not a part of the government, so.
Well, but the point is that they are acting on behalf of the government when they print money.
Are you sure?
I think so.
I think it's the reverse. You don't think that the big banks are kind of manipulating the politicians?
Well, that's another story. Yeah, I think that, of course they are. Talk to Jamie Dimon at Chase. He's right up there, and I'm sure they have their share of the people that try to influence government. Lobbyists.
Yeah,
is what I'm thinking of.
Exactly. Yeah, so they're the ones that are really calling the shots, the ones that are funding the whole thing.
Sure.
And the Rothschild family, for example, J.P. Morgan, all those that group, the people in the World Economic Forum.
Right.
Okay.
I guarantee you, I will never be manipulated. I will never be drawn to money. I'm not doing this for money.
So what if you have somebody who's helping to fund your campaign, and they say, hey, I want this done, and it goes against the will of the people?
It's never going to happen on my watch.
So if it does happen, for whatever reason, or if you're approached that way, because I don't know you super well personally, aside from this conversation and one other, right. But the reason I ask is because people campaign on anything that it takes to get into office.
Yep.
And then they do whatever the hell they want.
And that drives me nuts.
Do you think that there should be repercussions for that type of thing?
Well, See, I look at it a little bit differently. Yeah, there should be repercussions, but how do you implement that? It's back to how do you write a law that does that?
Right.
I have a tremendous amount of respect. I didn't initially, and I wasn't really a supporter, but I've watched Eli Crane evolve, and I've watched the way that he is acting as our congressman in this district. And I love the man. I think he's very, very good at what he does. We have a military background in common, but that isn't really what I love. What I love is that he does surveys of his constituents on a regular basis, and
Yeah.
he'll tell them, I'm confronted with this decision. This is the results that will happen if I go this way. This is what will happen if I go the other way. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
And when it came to Kevin McCarthy being elected as the Speaker of the House again, Congressman McCarthy came to Eli Crane into his office and said, I need your vote. You have to vote for me. What do you want? And Eli said, my constituents don't want me to, so I can't vote for you, and I won't. And he held his ground.
Thanks, Eli.
Man, that is so powerful. That is such a great statement. And I intend to run my office the same way. I learned quickly, and I watched what he did, and I thought, this he has it. We the people are the first three words of the Constitution. It's not an accident. Those are the most important words of the Constitution. It's all about the people that put you there.
Yeah.
I owe no one political favors.
Mm-hmm.
None. I don't owe anybody anything.
Yeah.
I'm retired. I'm okay. I will never be swayed by money. Will a lobbyist have access to me? Sure, because that's the way that the system operates.
Mm-hmm.
I will listen to them, and then I will make a decision based on what I truly believe in my heart is in the best interest of my constituents. And that's the way it should be. And these guys are all about we the people until they get elected. And once they get elected, it's all about me, 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 me.
Right.
They want to get money so that they can run again and have that power. You know, I've had power. I've had money. They're not all they're cracked up to be. I'm trying to do what I can, my little tiny piece to save America and our values.
So if you're elected senator, what would be the main thing that you would go after? What would you do first or most? What's most important to you being a senator?
I'll tell you, I've looked at the election laws in Arizona very carefully. They're in Title 16 of the ARS. And in going through that one statute at a time, I was very disappointed. Do you know that judges don't have discretion to say, you know, there were 60,000 ballots in the last election that didn't get signatures verified? They were mailed in, no verification of the signature. The judge doesn't have authority to order a new election.
That's crazy.
That's nuts. And the test that if you want to contest an election result, I didn't file an appeal when I lost my case or my election. I lost by 256 votes.
Yeah.
I didn't file an appeal. Why? Because when I looked at the statutes, I realized it was an impossible burden that no one could ever meet. And that's why all these cases with President Trump failed. All the cases with Carrie Lake, and Abe Hamadeh, and even Mark Fincham, all of those cases, it's an impossible burden. You have to file a lawsuit, which makes you the plaintiff. And as the plaintiff, you have the burden of proof. You have to prove, if that error never happened, I would have received, in Carrie Lake's case, 17,000 more votes. She can prove that 60,000 didn't have signature verifications. Which ones were they? She can't prove. Once the envelope and the ballot get separated so that the ballots can be counted, you have no way of identifying who voted what way.
Yeah.
So how can she meet her burden to prove that she would have received 17,000 more votes?
Yeah.
It's impossible.
It is.
So those statutes need to be revised.
Okay.
That's my mission. There are other things that are important to me too, but that's really very important.
You think is the most important thing right now.
Right now it is.
In our arena.
We had a meeting last night, a fundraiser event. And at that event, we had three experts in the election field. One is a lawyer, one of them is a PhD researcher, and what they taught our audience of about 100 people was that the election system is really in serious problems,
Yeah.
and we need to fix them.
Mm-hmm. Well, even if Carrie Lake didn't get that stuff overturned, thank God for what she's doing as far as setting a precedent for the people of saying, hey, we can fight back and we need to stand up.
She's a fighter, but
stuff.
she's fighting up against a tremendous system.
Yeah.
And the legal system, I got to tell you, it isn't that the judges are bad, although there may be some bad ones. But the problem is when they apply the law. I'm talking about the written word of the law. When they apply it, they can't find in favor of the person who got screwed in the election. And the reason they can't is they don't have the authority to say, this is wrong. 60,000 signatures not being verified is a major error in this election, and I am ordering a new election.
So how would you reorient some of the phraseology in these current laws to benefit that system and make it more efficient?
It's going to take more than just a couple minutes of talking to come up with the words for you. It's something that it depends. There are a lot of different statutes involved. One of the things is to give the judge discretion, like I said. There are a lot of things that can be reformed. I think if you violate a law that is an election law, and they can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, that's the criminal standard.
Yeah.
If they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you violated an election law, prison, 20 years, strict liability.
Yeah, which is crazy because they did prove that.
But the point is, today, we don't have that in Arizona.
Yeah.
We should.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't have a problem with paying for prisons for people who are trying to take away our most fundamental right, the right to vote for the people that we want to run our country. That's a unique characteristic of American government. People in the world don't get to pick their government.
Yeah.
We do. And that's why it drives me nuts when people sit back and go, well, I don't like the way the party's doing things. I'm not going to vote.
It doesn't affect me.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Only one vote.
If you're listening to this podcast, get off your butt.
Yeah.
Grab some friends, register, and vote.
Yeah. It's super important. All right, so let's move on here.
You can't complain if you don't vote.
Aside from last term, the last time you ran, have you run for any other political offices at any point?
Within the Republican Party, I ran for some offices, but that's not state office like the one that I'm running for now. I am now a member at large of the Republican Party of the state of Arizona.
What does that mean?
It means I have a seat at the executive committee meetings, and I have a vote. I'm also a state committeeman, and I'm a precinct committeeman as well.
And those meetings determine how the Republican Party will operate, or okay,
within the state.
Okay.
But I'm very disenchanted, just like you are. The Republican Party hasn't been living up to its obligations. They have a platform that sets forth exactly what that party stands for, and that's at the RNC level, the nationwide party. And
Yeah.
they're not doing anything consistent with their platform. So they've totally abdicated their actions and their power. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And it trickles down from there to the state and to the local government as well. And it's very frustrating to watch it failing. It's failing the members.
Yeah.
And the only alternative then winds up being the Democrats. And that's not a good alternative.
No, it's not. Definitely not. Seems like the lesser of two evils all the time.
That really drives me crazy. Lesser of two evils. That means no matter which way you go, you have evil.
Yeah.
Evil is not acceptable to me.
Yeah. And as far as it sits with the Republican side of things, we have three potential so-called evils. We've got you running for Senate.
I'm not an evil. No, go ahead.
No, but to get to my point, there's three people that are running for the same position.
Correct.
So regardless of who gets in, we're going to get one of these three choices. So we have to make sure that it's the best of the three choices. And we can only really do that by knowing who the people are that want the position and want to serve us and why.
I'm not hiding. That's why I'm here with you today.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
There's information at votezipperman.com about me, my positions on the issues, and my business card has my personal cell number on it, and I'm not going to change that. I want people to be able to contact me. I may have to call you back at 3 a.m. when I have a chance to do it, but the truth is that government has insulated itself from the people that are supposed to be represented. I want people to be able to call me, let me know what issues are important to you that I might be able to do something about when I go down to Phoenix. So the whole idea is a dialogue, and people don't make themselves available at all because they're above that.
Right. See, we have to talk about that. So I guess while we're on the subject, I'll go into the piece that I have about exactly that. I think it's crucial to recognize that in this system, it's been designed for we the people, just like in the Constitution, and that any politician or elected official is truly meant to be a servant to the people. So the misconception is that these individuals who achieve office are being elevated to some special position. Now, while it's an honorable position, it's super important for everybody to remember that a citizen is being lowered into servanthood for the people rather than elevated to some special spot. And all politicians in political offices, I think, should recognize that wielding that power is only in subservience to the people. You only get there because of the people, and your entire purpose is to serve the people. So it's a reversal of the main image that most people see, I think, for a politician.
Well, I wouldn't exactly say it the way that you have. One of the things that I've found is that my views may be very different from any other politician or potential politician that you ever talk to. I think the people come first. And if you consider it elevated, I'm not sure that it is, but okay. I was a real estate. Let me go back. I started my service to my fellow man, if you will, at 17 years of age when I went into the military. I served for 3.5 years. Then I went into medicine, and I served in medicine, taking care of sick people, and a lot of guys coming back from Vietnam. When I was working at Walter Reed, we had 3,500 orthopedic beds. That is a monster hospital. The regional medical center here is about 200 beds, just to put things in perspective. There were a lot of guys getting blown up in the field, and we were there to take care of them and help them and their families. The next service-related thing, I did X-ray, nuclear medicine, ultrasound. I did a whole lot of the imaging modalities, and that was interesting, but it was service once again. Then from there, I went, after a little bit more education, I became a real estate broker. As a broker, I was trying to solve problems that people have with their homes. I don't see a real estate broker as being superior to the people that own the homes that are buying and selling. Mm-hmm. They're a facilitator. They're helping to get the problems ironed out and make the deals happen. Mm-hmm. Then, after serving as a real estate broker, I became an attorney. Well, a lot of attorneys are in that to make money. That wasn't my goal. My goal was to provide the best service possible to the people who were counting on me to do that, and the money would come. And it did. I got so many word-of-mouth referrals I can't tell you, because I served the needs of my people, just as I did as a real estate broker before that. And all of a sudden, I found myself retired and living in Prescott. I get bored easily. So what am I going to do with myself? I'm serving the people, both with the party, and if God allows me to win this election, then I will be serving the people. I don't see myself as superior to anyone.
Yeah.
I have some capabilities. God gave me some skills. I've developed them to the best of my ability, but it's not because I'm all that. Right. I'm not full of myself. I'm working as a servant for the people. A lot of people have called me a servant leader, and that's the way I see it.
That's excellent.
So it's a different approach from anybody else that's running for this office.
Yeah, I haven't heard it spoken that way before, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate the opportunity.
To finish up some of the Senate stuff, there were a couple other things. Who are your endorsements? I think Carrie Lake endorsed you.
Well, in the last race, Carrie Lake endorsed me. Now, she's had a lot of lawsuits in common with one of my opponents. They filed lawsuits together, they went through that process. So she hasn't endorsed him, but she hasn't endorsed me either.
Okay.
And
And would that be Mark Fincham?
it would be.
Okay.
And she and he were endorsed by Trump last time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see those endorsements coming this time for Mark Fincham.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, he doesn't appear to be gaining any traction. But that's another issue, and I'm not really trying to put him down. I'm just saying it doesn't. He moves to this area to run for office, and I don't think that that's a successful strategy here.
Yeah.
A lot of people hold that against him.
Yeah, I'd heard that before that he's not a normal resident here except because he wants the office.
Yes.
I've heard that more than once, and I don't know anything other than what I've heard. But red flag laws, Second Amendment stuff.
No.
No red flag laws.
None.
Yeah.
Ever.
So Yavapai is special because they got rid of the red flag laws and
I was
became
there.
Oh, you were?
I was there when the Board of Supervisors
Yes.
made Yavapai County a Second Amendment sanctuary county.
Okay, so how permanent, how fixed is that?
I'm not sure when it expires. It's a good question.
So there's an expiration.
They've gone on record, but we're having an election for the Board of Supervisors. You're going to have all new supervisors in there.
Who might try to change
Who
that.
might try to change that, and I'll be there again. It was about 25 degrees that morning, and there were over 500 of us. People were all the way around the county office building on Fair Street, and the whole place was packed inside. And we were very adamant about the Second Amendment. And fortunately, the current sheriff is not the kind of guy that wants to get into a shooting match with people. He has gone on the record that he will not enforce any Second Amendment violations here in the county. It's only one person, but he's a powerful individual, a powerful position. Mm-hmm. And I'm a strong Second Amendment advocate. I think that goes along with being a veteran.
Yeah. Excuse me. I don't think I've met any veterans that are anti-gun.
Well,
pro-peace for sure.
We understand that a gun is a tool.
Yeah.
A gun doesn't kill people. It's the person behind the trigger that can kill someone.
Exactly. And so along that same vein, what do you feel about COVID-style mandates? Any kind of mandate that's for your safety?
Shantae Underwood is a person who was very big here at the Regional Medical Center against the mandates. She represented a lot of people who were employees at the hospital who were made to get injections as a condition of their employment. My wife and I were out there many Sundays, picketing, if you will, outside of the hospital, the Regional Medical Center. And we do not believe that anyone should be forced to put chemicals of any kind in their body as a condition of working. That should never be allowed. And there was a bill that was proposed, but it never got anywhere. I would be in support of that bill, and that is, if you're a CEO of a company and you mandate inoculations for any reason of your people, you are personally liable for any resulting negative consequences. So if I get cancer and I can prove that cancer was caused by the inoculation, you lose your home. And it goes on from there. Mm-hmm. Basically, it's cause and effect. You forced me to do this against my will. And if I wind up getting compromised because of that, then that's your responsibility.
Yeah.
And you should lose your home and your airplane and your nice car and all the things that you like to have that are the benefits of working hard. You should lose all those. So never put your people in that position. I think that's a good law. I like the way that sits. And I was told that a bill that was going to do that was introduced into our legislature. The bill passed, as far as I know. I read the bill that passed. It didn't say any of that stuff. You had to apply for an exemption based on religious grounds. The hospital had to deny that exemption. And then you had to be fired. And what happened is all the people that were involved quit rather than being fired.
So they didn't. That
It
didn't
didn't
apply
apply to anyone. This is what I was talking
Come
about
on.
before. They pass bills and they make a big deal out of it in the press. Here's a press release. I just did this. I'm so great. And the truth is, it's sleight of hand. It's a magic trick. And when you read the bill doesn't say what they said it says.
Yeah.
Now, is that because they're mean and they're lying, or does that mean that they're ignorant and don't know any better? I'm not sure which it is, but I can tell you that that's been done over and over again. And there are very few of these statutes that you see that actually get passed that really have a tangible result that's consistent with what you heard.
Yeah.
You have to read the bill and understand it. Unfortunately, it's written in legalese.
Yeah.
Nobody understands it.
No.
And so that's why we have bad laws in the books.
Are there? So when someone writes a bill that they're going to propose to be passed, is it publicly available to the people to observe or read or take to a lawyer and pay the lawyer, say, hey, before this goes through, can you read this and give me a summary?
Yes, and yes. However, you can go to azledge.gov, the same place that the Constitution is found, and every bill that's pending is listed there. You can also sign up for a thing called the Right to Speak. Right to Speak is a program where you can go online and you can let your legislators know how you feel about a given bill that's in the process of being looked at, might be passed. The place I would go to get more information is the AZ Free Enterprise Club. The Arizona Free Enterprise Club is very consistent with the values that I hold. They evaluate, they have a lot of very smart people, many of them lawyers, look at these pending legislation, and they will actually send out a list and say, we're in favor of these, thumbs up, and we're against these. If these pass, it's going to hurt free enterprise within Arizona. And the president of that group is a guy named Scott Musey. He's brilliant. And these people, their heart is in the right place, and they will help. If you want to participate in that Right to Speak program, you can go down and sign up in the state senate down in Phoenix, and give them your information. They'll give you credentials to log on, or you can call the AZ Free people, and they will see to it that one of their people goes down there for you. You don't have to go all the way down to Phoenix to get onto the system, and they'll send you your login credentials.
Cool.
So that you can participate. And that same system, I've participated for a long time in that system. That same system allows you to say, I do or I don't want to be heard on this issue when the committee meets to discuss it. So when the committee is evaluating whether or not to pass a new law, I've testified several times. You check the box saying, yes, I want to be heard. Then you drive down to Phoenix and you wait for that matter to come before the committee, and you'll be called and you have a chance to get up, talk to the microphone, and they videotape what's going on in that room. And in the last session, I testified several times with the judiciary committees of the elections committees of both the House and the Senate. And in the previous session, I was in front of the judiciary quite a bit, and the elections commission.
Is there a time limit that they give you?
Oh yeah. Otherwise, people would abuse
you'd be
it.
there all day.
But it's reasonable, and
like 2 minutes or 5 minutes.
it's a couple minutes. 2 minutes is probably typical. But I remember I was in front of the elections committee of the House, and Alex Colladin, the lawyer, decided he had some questions, and he started cross-examining me. And I recognized the techniques very clearly, and he was really good. Put me on the spot, made me address some of the issues that he was concerned about. It's an opportunity to share the public, to share their views about what's going on with our legislators. It's a great opportunity, but it's a lot of work, and it takes time out of your day.
Yeah. Yeah, and all the people that do see this country going slowly down the toilet, these are the types of activities that need to be engaged in to reverse or prevent that.
I'm doing everything in my power. I'm trying to follow what the Founding Fathers had in mind, and to see to it that the legislature here in Arizona does things that are truly in the best interest of the people.
Yeah. Do you have children?
Long story. I was married for 30 years. My wife passed away, and she and I never had children, but she had children from a previous life. And so I had grandchildren and a daughter, and I've been down that road before.
Mhm.
My granddaughter embezzled a lot of money from me in my law firm when my wife was dying, so I kind of wrote them off, and we've gone our separate ways.
Hmm.
My current wife has two daughters, and they're woke. They live in Portland,
Oh,
so they've kind of written us off too.
yeah,
It's just kind of the way it goes.
it's unfortunate. Now, you mentioned God a couple times, and then we talked about the oath. Now, who is God to you?
Wow, that's a very broad subject. I've never had to think about it in those terms. God is from a spiritual standpoint, God is all-knowing and is, in a way, we're kind of like his playthings. He's trying to make sure that we make it in life, but he's given us the right of free choice. We make bad decisions too frequently, sometimes under a negative influence. Some people call it the devil. I think that God is there to take care of us, and he's there when we seek him. And sometimes we wonder why God would allow things to happen. They don't seem just, totally innocent. When I was in medicine, I saw this quite a bit. A child, a teenager, somebody that had done no harm to anyone gets a terrible form of cancer. It's hard to understand how a loving God could allow that to happen, but it
Mm-hmm.
happens anyhow or in spite of him. But when we're in trouble, we all seek God. And I was very blessed. My parents brought me up with a philosophy, and that is, you don't do things because you're afraid God's going to get you. You do things because they're the right thing to do.
That's great.
And you have an internal clock that just says, no, this isn't right. You shouldn't be doing
The
this.
moral compass.
Listen to that little voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, today, Disney's a horrible example of how to raise children today. I remember when Jiminy Cricket was always there, and let your conscience be your guide, is what we were taught as kids. And I don't think children are even made aware of the fact that they have a conscience today.
Hmm. So, what do you believe happens when you die?
Well, there's a lot of different schools of thought.
What is yours?
I don't have to worry about it. And the reason I don't is because I do the right thing, because it's the right thing to do. I think that our politicians have made big mistakes over the years. They make a lot of transgressions, and they think it's okay. They can justify their actions. I think we need to return to what the founding fathers really thought we should, and that is morality being the center of our universe. Almost always that's faith-based, honesty and integrity. And with morality, honesty, and integrity, I intend to lead by example. And that's how we get back on track. We have to be honest with one another, sometimes brutally honest. We have to fight for what we believe in, and we have to stay out with the truth. And that's another place that I found a lot of legislators lacking. They'll say whatever they have to say, and they're not smart enough to remember that they said the opposite last week.
Yeah. So, do you believe in reincarnation or a heaven and hell model, or?
Well, my wife believes in reincarnation, and she's a strong believer in that. Um, heaven and hell, it's hard. There's no proof, but you have to have faith. So, yeah, I believe in heaven. I don't think about hell because I don't intend to visit. And, I think that a just and loving God is not going to take it against anybody who's being a good person, being morally proper, being honest, and someone who has integrity, does what they say they're going to do. And, if you live that kind of life, you don't have much to worry about. God will take care of God. And I believe in God. And when things get tough, that's the first place I go. But most of the time, day to day, I'm busy living my life and just trying to be live a moral life and the kind of life that God would want us to all live.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine God taking a person that was born, Catholic is right, and you're Protestant, so you're going to hell. I can't see that kind of a philosophy from God. So I think it's all based on how you live your life and what you do and how you treat people. And, I'm at peace. I haven't intentionally done anything to harm anybody in a long time.
That's
and,
good.
So
then I guess who to you would Jesus Christ be?
Well, I was brought up Jewish, okay? And so it's a little difficult question to ask, and in this community, that's something that's important. I talked to my wife as we came into this community, saying this is a very Christian community, and I'm not sure how we will be accepted here. I don't know. I don't practice Judaism. There are reasons for that. I think organized religions have had problems. All of them have had problems over the years.
Indeed.
And they're fallible because people run those religions.
Yeah.
So I try not to put labels on things. Jesus Christ was a very good man and a good teacher, and Son of God, maybe not. That's debatable. I wasn't there. I can't tell you. But my wife and I just finished watching a series on cable, The Chosen.
Great series.
Really great
Phenomenal.
series. And the people in that series did a phenomenal job of acting and presenting the information. And I don't have a problem believing what they were presenting in that show.
And Judaism teaches that Christ is not who he says he was, right?
No, that isn't true.
What
Judaism says is that he was a very bright man, a very good man. He was a teacher. He was a rabbi. And he, the politics of the Pharisees and Jesus, that became a real issue back then. Politics have always been a part of our society. And, if he was the Son of God, then he was the Messiah. But the Jews believed that he wasn't the Messiah.
Right, yeah.
That's the only difference.
Right.
And they're still waiting.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's right.
Only time will tell who's right. If another guy shows up that is the Messiah, then all of a sudden it's going to cause all kinds of turmoil in the world.
Yep.
I don't know that that's going to happen, but as human beings, we're given free choice, free will.
Yeah.
And my experience leads me to believe that God isn't going to take advantage of me because I'm not wearing a cross around my neck, even though I believe 99% of the same things that a Christian person believes.
I fully understand.
And I live my life that way.
Yeah.
So
thank you for being open about that stuff. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's a little uncomfortable, I'll be honest with you, but I'm not hiding the ball. I am who I am.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people that would immediately say, "Well, I'm a good Christian." But
Yeah.
if you look deeper, some of the people are in politics. A lot of them are in politics. They say that they're a good Christian. Yes, I belong to this church.
Yeah.
But the truth is that they aren't morally proper or morally fit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's one. It goes back to that. They'll say anything to get in that position. They appeal to the conservative Christian crowd.
Sure.
Basically.
It's easier to go along with that flow than it is to fight it.
To be the outlier. Yeah. Exactly.
But I am who I am, and I will fight for your rights the same way, because I'm not going to be easily swayed when it comes to the difficult issues that face the people of this state.
Yeah. And now trying to put myself in the shoes of being someone who's supposed to uphold the Constitution and then also be a good Christian, because as I am a Christian now, there's a spot where it seems like they might butt heads, and it's like, okay, well, the Bible says this, it says to evangelize, it says walk in this way, teach to these people, and then the Constitution is, okay, also uphold everybody else's right to practice whatever they believe, even if it conflicts with yours. And I completely agree with the Constitution.
Well,
So
it's a difficult thing, and it's not limited to religion. If you want to talk about homosexuality, it's the same kind of a thing, okay? A lot of people say it's against the Bible. They're going to hell. I don't want any part of it. There are other people that say, well, everybody has to make a decision as to how they're going to live their life. And as long as they're not influencing minors, and as long as they're not sticking it in my face, what they do in their own privacy of their own home is their business.
Yeah.
And that's more of a libertarian view.
Right.
And, I agree with that view more than the one that is religiously condemning people based on something that I really have no business even talking about. But bring children into the picture, start influencing children with homosexuality and transsexual stuff.
Yeah.
You're going to find the worst enemy you've ever thought of.
So then these family-friendly drag shows and all that kind of crap.
Big issue in this town, and I'm so against that stuff.
It is February 10th. There's some group that's trying to put that on here in Prescott. And then there's other dates and locations in smaller towns around Arizona that this one group is trying to push these family-friendly drag shows and pride parades and stuff. What can we do to prevent that kind of stuff? 'Cause
well,
it's not family-friendly.
State laws would help, and there'd be a lot of lobbying against it from the other side. They got a lot more money than we do. But a state law that I would be in favor of is you take a child to a sexually explicit or transgender show. You have to be careful how you define that. Then the establishment owner and the parent both wind up having a crime, a felony that they have to explain away.
This would be child abuse.
Well, that's a good way to characterize it. But something more specific has to be written in order to get it classified that way.
I see.
It's a big problem in the cities in particular, the county too, but the cities in particular. I'll talk about Prescott. They're scared to death because the second they impose, I know Cottonwood had the same thing. As soon as they pass something that outlaws drag shows, Mark Elias and the left will start filing lawsuits. He's a lawyer that represents the left on any of these provocative issues, and he does it free. He's got plenty of money from George Soros to go after these issues.
Go figure.
Yeah. And so what they're doing is they're pushing people into a corner where they have to confront this issue. And they're doing it in rural Arizona. It's a planned attack, and the cities are scared. They go, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars is it going to cost us to defend ourselves once we passed an ordinance? Hell, we've got the same thing with the homeless issue here in Prescott. Nobody wants the homeless camping out around town, but they don't have a spine in this city because they're afraid of the consequences. And they're not willing to stand up and be counted.
And once again, it's money over morality.
Amen.
Man.
I'm with you on this stuff. These are not the correct stance, but the government officials that have been elected in the Prescott area, in Prescott in particular, are very left-leaning. And so these ideas aren't that abhorrent to them.
Yeah.
And so they go along with it. Oh, no, we're not going to enforce that. We'll make this law over here that's really weak because we don't want to be accused of doing anything that's going to really take care of the problem.
Yeah, nobody wants to make waves anymore.
Yeah. I will.
Good. Kind of jumping around a bit. You came from California, and as I'm sure you're well aware, the social climate of Arizonans is there's a lot of people coming in from California.
Yes.
A lot of Arizonans are not a fan of that because they bring the politics here.
Yep.
You obviously don't seem like that type of person.
I guarantee anybody that's listening to this podcast, I will never change my stripes. People from California, a lot of them are just like me. They're political refugees. I knocked a lot of doors in the last campaign, and I can't tell you how many people told me they were very happy to see me. They were very glad they'd just been here a couple of years from California. Don't make Arizona like the place that I escaped from.
Yeah,
okay?
Exactly. That's the whole point of
I
that.
will never, ever do that.
Awesome.
I'm Like I said earlier, I watched California go from Ronald Reagan conservative to woke,
Yeah.
and it scared the hell out of me. And I saw how they did it. I studied how they did it, and a lot of it was through ranked choice voting and what they call the jungle primary, and they're trying to get that approved on the ballot for here. And you have to vote against ranked choice voting at all costs. It's evil. What happened in California is for every election, you'd wind up with two Democrats running against each other in the general election because they got more votes in the primary than the Republican or the Libertarian or anybody else.
Huh.
So it was the top two vote getters that wound up on the ballot. So for governor, two Democrats. For Secretary of State, two Democrats. And there was no chance. This is what made us move here. There was no chance for a conservative to ever get elected.
That's wild.
It was horrible, and we can't let that happen here. So a lot of people, the people that are native Arizonans, are really against people from California. And I understand the traffic, and I understand the liberals coming from California. I understand people coming here trying to make it like California. I'm against all those people being here. My thought is this. There are a lot of people like myself that have come here. This is my chosen home. I'm here because I want to be here, and I want to participate in this system, and I want to make it better for everybody that's here.
Yeah.
I am not trying to make this like the place that I escaped from.
Right.
That's horrible over there.
Yeah.
And I know how they did it. Elect me, and I will try to do everything in my power to prevent that from happening here.
Excellent.
And vote against ranked choice voting.
There's some listener questions that have been compiled as well.
Sure.
In that same subject, a lot of people think that there should be some sort of a residency time frame before you can run for office. What do you think about that?
Well, I understand the thought. The people that are for that are typically native Arizonans.
Yeah.
And they have a prejudice. And the prejudice that they have is based on the fact that, well, from an accident of birth, I wound up being born here. So that makes me better than somebody that came here because they wanted to be here.
Yeah, it's like a cultural assumption.
I'm not sure that that's a valid position to take. Now, am I against people that are native Arizonans? Hell no. I love native Arizonans. But don't put me in a category of the people. I'm not the enemy. I'm on your side. I like guns. I want freedom.
Yeah.
And the Wild West mindset, yes, that's why I moved here.
Right on.
So I don't want to be considered a Californian. I abandoned that label when I swore my allegiance to Arizona.
Well, the thing that those people that may be prejudiced needs to remember is that everybody is an American first.
Yep.
And if you want to take sides, state versus state, well, I mean, respectfully, you can fuck off.
But I like that. But there's a lot of prejudice in Arizona, and the prejudice is by the people that were born here for the people that were born here.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I've done deals with some people. One of the guys I've dealt with is Tom Devereaux. And he's developed a bunch of land around here into lots where people could build homes. Very nicely done. He's one of the only guys that could do it. He owned a company that built all the bridges along I-40 from all the way from Flagstaff to Kingman. And he had a big construction company. And then he bought the top of a mountain here, and he's been carving lots out of it for a while. And he's a decent guy, and we've done business before. And he's a native. He's been here his whole life, and I respect the guy. And honestly, he'd rather do a real estate deal with a handshake than 25 pages of lawyer-drafted contract.
Yeah.
And I'm with him. And as long as we both do what we say we're going to do, there's no issue.
Yeah.
So,
awesome.
I respect the people that are natives here.
Yeah.
I just hope they'll respect me.
Right, and that's the thing that I need to say to those people that are native Arizonans that don't like Californians for whatever your reason is. It needs to be a person-by-person assessment rather than a lumping everybody into a California pool, because not everybody from California thinks the same way, especially if they're leaving California to get away from the garbage that's happened in the last few years. So
well stated. Stated. I appreciate what you had to say there. That sums it up. I jumped out of the pool.
Yeah.
Don't put me in the pool.
Yeah,
I jumped out.
You came here for a reason, and you're a great example of somebody that is not bringing the California with them. So thanks for that. We've got a couple other subjects here. The woke stuff we touched on a little bit, and I can kind of assume where you stand on that. Anti-woke.
Well, anti-woke, but I'm reasonable. Talk to me.
Yeah, you mentioned that, kind of do whatever you want, but when you bring the kids into it, no,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
I'm not for ranked choice voting. I'm not for the kids. They used to use the term SEL.
What's that term?
Social emotional learning. It was used in the schools. I think that our public schools are doing a horrible job of educating our children.
Yeah.
The test scores prove it. They back it up. Only about 50% of our high school graduates in the Prescott area are proficient in English, and only about 33% are proficient in math.
Yeah.
That's horrible. How can these kids that were graduating out of our schools be competitive in the working world? They can't. They can't be a scientist. They can't be, there are so many professions that require knowing numbers or knowing the English language.
Yeah.
And our schools are failing them. And I am very much in favor of parental choice. The parents get the choice of where the kid goes to school. And what that does is it creates competition for the public schools. If the schools have no competition, then they continue to put out a bad product, and we're all stuck with it. But if you have a choice and you can buy a better product for your child and assure them a better education, then the money should follow the child and the parent should make the choice. You want to put them in homeschooling? You want to put them in a private school? More good luck to you. I'm totally behind that effort. And what happens? The money is lost by the public schools, and they go, "Oh my God, we're going to have to close the public schools." Fine. Close them if they don't up their game.
Yeah.
You want to be competitive, you want the money, then teach the kids. Instead of the money all being shuffled off into the administrators, teachers aren't making that much money. It's all going to the administrative stuff. And so I'm a firm believer in the ESA program, which is the equivalent of vouchers here in Arizona. The governor's against it, but I'm for it. And
Wait, Governor Katie Hobbs is against it?
imagine that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
She doesn't want people to have the choice of where their kids are educated.
Oh.
And, she's been, I'm sure that the lobbyists have had their way with her.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that I think that our current superintendent of schools, Tom Horn, is doing a really good job. He's behind the ESA program. Let's create alternatives to public education that are going to educate the kids and give them a chance in the community. Now, there are exceptions, but they're not really. Most of them aren't public schools. Trinity Christian is an amazing private school. And the kids are taught what they call a classical Christian education.
Yeah.
And they do a great job of it. And we went to a fundraiser there, and my wife and I donated money because we believe in what they're doing. They're doing a great job of educating the kids. I was joking with some of the people on the board there saying that Trinity Christian is it's Hillsdale Junior. It's for the kids that are destined to go to a school like Hillsdale.
Very good. All right, so there's one touchy subject.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I've heard rumors about this, and I need to know what the scoop is. People are saying that you have a volunteer on your campaign who is a man but presents as a woman. Is that true?
Okay, so let me tell you the real story. Okay, there are people that characterize it that way. We teach the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, and there was a woman that came into our class that was clearly transsexual, and there are some things that you just can't hide.
Yeah, so it's really a man.
Well, it depends. I haven't looked.
You didn't get the genital scoop on the
I
whole
haven't
thing?
looked. Okay, maybe from a genetic standpoint, and I really think that's how these things like men and women's sports should be evaluated. 2X chromosomes. Okay, you can compete in women's sports. I think it should be a chromosome test. Very simple, and you either pass or you don't. Getting back to this individual, First time I met this individual, I was at an Arizona State Rifle and Pistol Association meeting down in Black Canyon City. Got to talking a little bit, learned that this person was a conservative. I was getting petitions signed to run for office. I asked if she'd sign. She said yes. Okay. Then I went to the Yavapai County preparedness team meeting, several meetings. Saw the same person there many times. Came to learn that this person was truly a serious conservative. Then saw the person at the Lions Liberty meeting. Once again, established bona fides, serious conservative perspective. Then she took the class that my wife and I offer in the U.S. Constitution. Clearly, the discussions in class led me to believe this person is seriously conservative. Like I said before about homosexuals, what a person does in their own life is their own business. Now, I happen to know that that person made a transition at about over 50 years of age, had to go through electroshock therapy as part of the process. It was ugly back then when this transformation apparently took place. I wasn't part of it. I don't know.
Like a surgical thing?
Well, it was electroshock therapy because there was a difference between the way the person felt and the way the person looked when you looked at their genitals. Okay?
So common trans
Yeah.
thing.
So I'm not promoting transsexual anything, okay? This person is asked, at the end of the class, I ask people, hey, I'm running for the Arizona State Senate. Anybody in here that would like to work on our campaign, help us out, I'd appreciate it. Just let me know. This person came to me and said, yes, I would like to help your campaign. Now, I don't discriminate against anybody. I've also had a few conversations with that individual who is adamantly against anything having to do with children, pushing kids to take hormones, any of the stuff that's being done in schools today, and didn't want a public persona as part of working for the campaign. Mm-hmm. So I said, would you be comfortable doing research for us? Computers. Really smart person, I might add, with a lot of background and a lot of experience, very knowledgeable. So she said, yes, I would be happy to do that. That way I can help the campaign and not be in the public spotlight. Mm-hmm. And the people that are making this a big issue, it's too bad. And the truth is, this person isn't hurting anybody. If you believe that God wants people to think a certain way about sexuality, then that's your issue.
I think people just don't know, and I think they're concerned about the issues we were talking about before regarding the children. So people want to know, like, what's the scope of this? First of all, is it true? And secondly, what's the scope of this? And does it compromise your position or put our children in danger?
I agree.
From a potential politician?
Okay, I understand. I'll address that directly.
Yeah.
Okay. I do not believe that this person has in mind anything that will harm children. If I did, I would put my foot down, because I don't care if you're heterosexual. If you were working on my campaign and you were abusing children, you'd be off my campaign. Right. It doesn't matter what your sexuality is. Yeah. I tried not to discriminate against people based on those categories you were talking about before. I try not to lump everybody into one category and say they're all the same. They're all the same. My perspective is everybody has to earn their own way. And if you prove yourself not to be worthy, then you're gone from my world. Mm-hmm. If you're not harming anyone, then you should be free to be an American and live your life the way you want to live it,
freedom of choice,
without being scrutinized in a way that makes it impossible for you to survive. Right. And that's been done a lot over the years. And, as somebody that grew up Jewish, I know what being picked on is all about. Yeah. And a lot of it's bullying, and a lot of it's lumping people into categories. and I'll take every person on their own. And as soon as they prove themselves unworthy, they're definitely gone. I'm not going to be influenced in terms of my sexuality. I'm clearly a heterosexual, but as a heterosexual man, I've never had a gay experience. I've never had any desire to be trans, but I understand what it's like when you don't feel like you fit in.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are put in, these days, kids are put into positions where they think it's normal and they're pushed in that direction.
Right.
I am against that no matter where it's coming from.
And I think that's the big concern.
I'm against it.
Yeah. So
just because I have one person out of more than 100 people that are working on my campaign right now, there's one person that has a personal issue. And for anybody to try to make that a political issue is wrong.
Right. No, I think people just want to understand where you're at in relation to that.
It won't impact my feelings at all. My feelings are that everybody's got to earn their way, and they do that with their deeds.
And when you say this person has a personal issue, would you categorize that as like gender dysphoria, or is this something different?
I'm not an expert in that area. All that I can tell you is that if you're 50 years old and you make the decision to change your sex or the way you appear to the world, that is a very personal issue.
Yeah.
And in order for you to do that, you're standing up. Very similar to the way I'm standing up right now. As I'm running for office, it's exposing yourself to criticism and to ridicule.
Yeah.
And I've been lied about in my last campaign quite a bit, and I didn't like it.
Yeah. No, that's gotta suck.
And I think that everybody has to earn their way in this world, and it's by what you do and how you behave.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen anything from this individual to ever let me think that they haven't earned the right to my respect as a human being.
Well, thank you. I think that to what you said about your last election, how there were a lot of lies told about you, I think this is the antidote to that, is hearing your perspective in depth on all the stuff that people might be lying about.
I'm here.
Go straight to you.
The thing about me being from California was used a lot in the last campaign.
I'm sure it's an easy tagline for a lot of people to jump on board with. So.
And a lot of people do, but unfortunately, it's not going to impact the way that I make my decisions.
Kick ass. Well, let's see what else we have here. Strength of our border.
Yes.
We touched on the border a little bit on the phone.
Yes.
So my issue that I may not be educated enough to understand your position on is that you want a strong border, you want the wall finished, you want the border secure ultimately, right? To put it basically.
Yes.
So then my question...
I want the INS to go to employers and to round up busloads of people that are here illegally and take them out of this country.
Just like
they used to.
Isn't that the law?
That's the law.
The sitting law.
But the federal government is corrupt.
So how come states' rights can't overrule that when our whole state is in jeopardy because of it?
That book in front of you,
Constitution.
it says the federal government is supreme. And that's what the cases have said over the years. And the bottom line is the federal Constitution puts immigration matters in the hands of the INS and other border enforcement agencies.
Okay.
But let me tell you, I am right now working very diligently with a friend that's a lawyer here in Arizona, and he's rounded up funding sources, and I want to bring a lawsuit against the federal government by the state of Arizona, and it will read the state of Arizona versus the United States of America for violation of Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution.
What does that say?
It says that the state of Arizona and all the other states will be protected by the federal government against invasion. And that is a mandate. That's the Constitution, guys. That requires the federal government to deport those people and to enforce the border. Now, legal immigrants, I can tolerate them all day long. They're the hardest working people, and they deserve all the attaboys and all the accolades they get. Mm-hmm. They come to this country, they sleep, I've seen it, they sleep 10 in a room. on mattresses on the floor, and then they can buy one house. So the first guy leaves and gets his house, and after all those people work 12 hours, 14 hours, 18 hours a day,
Hard labor.
they work their butts off,
Yeah.
and they deserve a chance in this country. And I've seen other people that have come as legitimate citizens that have sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States, just like you and I did, and they're welcome. But the illegal immigrants, the people that have stolen their way across, I'm waiting for a terrorist cell to wipe out Tucson, for example.
Right.
They're here.
Yeah.
They've come through the border, and they know what they're doing. And they're organizing now, and they will indeed have an incident. It's just a matter of time.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that we need to enforce our border, and I think that people that come here legally are welcome, and people who aren't should leave.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny in the last campaign. It's funny. I was running against two guys who had both served in the government here in the legislature, and one of them is no longer running as a politician. I think he's retired, but he said to me that the border, it was impossible, that I just didn't understand that you can't put a border wall along the entire border. And I said, okay, how? Why? And he said, there's an Indian reservation, the Tohono O'odham, that is on the border. And I said, well, I've got a really good solution for that. If the U.S. government won't enforce the border, the state of Arizona can build a wall on our side of the border. And when it gets to the reservation, at that point, I would meet with the tribal chiefs, the council, and say, okay, your choice. We either continue with the border right along between the United States and Mexico, and you have to give us 50 feet access so that we can maintain the fence. Okay? Either we put it there, or we put it on our side of the reservation. So if you want to be on the Mexico side with the cartels, you're welcome to be on that side, or you're welcome to be on our side. Your choice. But we're going to build the wall, and if you don't agree, we're putting it on our side of the official border.
Yeah.
And they could do that down the entire border. There's some issues with mountains and difficult terrain, but we got some really good engineers in this country.
Yeah, nothing we haven't conquered or couldn't build over.
You have to have a will.
Yeah, that's
Now,
it.
do we want to spend the money on it? We got a problem. We got a Democrat governor that loves immigrants, illegal immigrants.
Well, she loves votes.
Well, okay, but she's not gonna be very favorable towards this.
Yeah.
It's been suggested that maybe the National Guard could be called out. The governor has no will. On the other hand, in Texas, Governor Abbott is one of my heroes. The guy has done everything that he can possibly do to enforce the border there, except one thing that I came up with that he hasn't done that I would love to see. If you went down to Florida and you boxed up a bunch of those alligators and you put them in the I'm drawing a blank on the name of the
Rio Grande?
yeah, right along the southern border of Texas.
Yeah.
14-foot alligator. How many illegals are going to swim across that place?
Less for sure.
A heck of a lot less. Okay, and it's a simple fix.
Yeah.
You just got to worry about your own people going out into the water.
Oh, man. So then if our governor is not doing her job and the federal government's not doing its job, isn't it up to us, the people, to forget about that structure or the people that are holding office that were falsely elected in order to secure our own border to protect ourselves and our neighbors?
That's why election integrity is so important, and reform of the election laws. Right now, it's open season, and there are a lot of different problems. One of our speakers last night at our fundraiser was a doctor. Dr. Robert Epstein is a brilliant man. And what he was talking about last night made a lot of people in the audience shiver. And that is that Google, when you do a Google search politically to find information on things, they already know that how you feel politically, because they've got millions of pages of your data that they've been storing on every search you've ever done. And so they say, okay, this person is a conservative. Well, we'll treat them one way when they do a search, and we'll treat liberals a different way. And what Dr. Epstein's found is that the order of the search results makes a big difference on how people think. And if you're first or second in that search, that will create one impression and a more favorable impression to the left, as opposed to down 10th on the list. And so they manipulate the order of the search results depending on your party to change the way you view your vote.
Catered to individuals.
Catered to individuals. And it's more than that, because Google also, my wife and I had an experience. We heard Dr. Epstein talk, and then my wife started talking about an experience that she and I had had. My wife was looking at some of these people that were running as Democrats, and she said, "This is insane. I can't believe these people think this way. Let me find out more about them." And so she did a search on all the Democrat candidates in the last cycle. Well, I didn't do that because I know they're not thinking clearly, and I didn't want to know more because there would be no benefit to it. It would be a waste of my time. So come election day, my wife gets these pop-ups on her screen, like a week before the election, saying, "Don't forget to vote. Get out to vote. Don't forget, you got to vote today. This is the last day you have to vote for the person that you want in office." I didn't get any of those. And they were geared, because they figured she was a Democrat, they were geared to getting the Democrats out to vote.
Also, it mentioned specific candidates or something?
No, but they knew that she had done a bunch of searches for the Democrat candidates.
I see what you're saying.
And so they categorized her as a Democrat and me as a Republican, and I didn't get the pop-ups.
Yeah.
We got different images. They were trying to get people out to vote that thought a certain way, that they would vote for their candidates. And Dr. Epstein says, he's done the numbers, and I trust the guy. He's very honorable. The numbers say that they manipulated so many votes, 6 million votes in the 2020 election. And the election was decided by like 3 or 4 million. So the election outcome was determined. It isn't that Joe Biden was such a wonderful candidate when he didn't even campaign.
Everybody knows that's bullshit.
But that's one of the ways that they were able to manipulate it. And Carrie Lake won her election if Google would have stayed the hell out of it.
Yeah.
But apparently Google manipulated so many votes, and people in our audience last night were absolutely shocked to learn this, because people don't think that way. We all look at it and go, "Oh, Google's just providing me this free service and it's wonderful."
Meanwhile, taking over the world.
They are evil,
Yeah.
and they are doing evil work, and we're allowing that to happen. So we can fix it a lot of different ways. One is for all the people that have given up on the Republicans because they're disgusted, they're conservatives, and they're going, it's all rhinos, and they're not doing anything for me. Those people need to get off their butt, register, and vote in the next election cycle. And when you're voting, vote for Steve Zipperman.
Going back to the border issue and Katie Hobbs and Mayorkas and Adrian Fontes and all these people that are intentionally not doing their job, would you consider those to be domestic enemies?
I would, but it's not easy to get rid of them. Recall elections are expensive, and they don't work very well.
Right.
And you have to have a better alternative available. To a large extent, the people that are sitting on the sidelines and have given up their right to vote because they're disgusted gave the election to the other side, and those are conservatives. They walked away, and they gave it to the Dems because they weren't participating. It's a combination of factors, but that's a big one.
Yeah. Instead of having some kind of a recall election, I mean, it seems like some strong action needs to be taken, but it also seems like our hands are tied by the structure of the system.
Yeah.
So either we go through the system and what it seems like is continually fail, or we go outside of the system and potentially put our own selves in jeopardy.
Well, civil war has been talked about quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm not an advocate for civil war, but I look at what's going on daily. I try to keep abreast of the changes in our government and the world around us. And let me just say I'm a strong believer in the Second Amendment. We were given the Second Amendment because our founding fathers didn't want us to suffer under the tyranny of an oppressive government. Mm-hmm. Is that what Katie Hobbs is providing? I can't say, but I can just raise the issue.
I'm happy to say she's a problem, and she's creating a lot more problems. Something Thomas Jefferson said in this quote comes from a letter that he wrote to William Stephen Smith on November 13th of 1787. This is about something called Shays' Rebellion in Massachusetts in 1787. What country before ever existed a century and a half without a rebellion? And what country can preserve its liberties if their rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. The remedy is to set them right as to facts, pardon, and pacify them. What signify a few lives lost in a century or two? The tree of liberty must be refreshed
with the blood of tyrants and patriots.
Indeed. It is its natural manure.
Yes, I'm familiar with that quote. And, Jefferson's kind of a hero of mine. I think that the guy was really very well suited for his time, and we're very lucky to have had him. He's one of the most influential founding fathers. And, those words, the reason I'm familiar with them is because they're meaningful to me. And I'm hoping that it doesn't come to that. But one of the reasons that we came to Prescott is because Prescott believes in freedom. And the patriots that have moved here and that live here are willing to fight and die for it. A lot of them are veterans like you and I. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are first responders. A lot of them are retired military, retired police. That there are a lot of people in this community. And you mentioned the vote by the Board of Supervisors to make Yavapai a Second Amendment sanctuary county. A lot of the people that I met at those hearings, those people are serious patriots, and they're ready to die to preserve this country. And those of us like you and I who took the oath, it doesn't ever expire. And I have no doubt that if they came over the hill to tyrannize us or our families, that you and I would be standing side by side, doing our very best to defend our ground.
Well, that's for damn sure. And I wish it were as simple as a coming over the hill on foot, because right now it's happening. They're coming over the hill. They're taking things from us.
We're giving it away.
That's it.
We're not fighting. We're not putting up any resistance.
Yeah.
It's here's an analog. Our telephones, our mobile phones that we rely on daily, all day, every day, can't think without one in our hand. If you left it at home, you might as well die. Okay? We've given up our freedom. They're monitoring everything we say and do, whether the phone's on or not. Every place we go, they have all that data, everything that we punch in. We give it up in the name of efficiency and getting more information. It's a bad trade, yet we've all done it.
Yeah.
And so we've invited them into our bedrooms. We've invited them into our homes. It's not fair, and we're being taken advantage of. And we're doing so willingly. There's really no excuse for it other than we're all lazy, and we're all willing to compromise on something that we really shouldn't be willing to do.
Yeah.
And that's part of the undermining of America and our freedom.
Like my good friend Shane says, a little bit of discipline goes a long way. I think it's really up to the individual to make those personal choices in their own life.
It's a hard decision to make.
It is hard. It is. Well, that's all I have
Aw.
I have some listener questions that we'll jet through, but I think we answered most of them already.
Okay.
But thank you so much, man. This has been great.
Well, I don't know if it's been good for your listeners. I hope so. If
It's good for everybody.
I'm an open book. I'm not trying to hide the ball, and
Yeah.
that's part of what's unique about my running for office.
Yeah.
I'm a grassroots candidate who believes in the people, is willing to fight for the people, and I'm not hiding the ball. So ask me.
Excellent. Well, we'll jet through these. Let's see what we got here. Steve has stated that we should be able to trace every vote back to the voter and know how they vote. How does he justify this with the Federalist Papers and the need to protect voters?
It's a bad quote of me. I never said that.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
I don't believe that you can trace. I absolutely don't agree with it, because the way our system works, the second the envelope and the ballot are separated so that the ballot can be tabulated,
Yeah.
you can't trace the vote.
Right.
What I've said is there is a problem in our system. Because of that, none of the people who challenge an election can meet the burden of proof in their case. So there's a problem, and I have other solutions to solve that.
So it's better to change the election integrity law rather than to try and trace who voted for whom.
Correct, because
Right.
we have secret ballots. That's part of our system.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if they knew that you were voting for conservatives, they'd come after you, Andy. We can't have that.
No.
It's bad enough that you have to register Republican or Libertarian.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
You can't just vote whoever you want to vote for. All right.
A lot of history behind that.
Michelle Burchell is one of the most respected recorders in Arizona. Why are Steve's supporters leading an effort to defeat her? Where does Steve get his information about elections?
Where the hell are these questions coming from? Michelle Burchell is like my hero, too. I love Michelle. Michelle and I meet fairly regularly. Anytime I call her and say, Michelle, there's an issue. I just found out about a voter registration problem. I have some questions I want to ask you. She and I meet for lunch. The last time we met, it's been a couple, 2-3 months. Last time we met that way, we had an hour and a half set aside for our meeting. It took 4.5 hours. We just kept talking about more election issues and more election issues. She's the most legitimate recorder I've ever met, I've ever talked to, I've ever heard of. She is a conservative, and she does her very best not to let that influence things, but she also is willing to say, if you do away with the ballot boxes, the end result is conservatives are going to lose a lot more votes, because it's the conservatives that are too lazy to go down and cast their vote. The Democrats will always show up, but the conservatives won't. And so it makes it easier for them to cast their ballot by having a ballot box near their home. If they don't have that, they won't vote. So
this is not.
it's
not
a
even
garbage
close to
question.
true. Okay.
It is a garbage question. I love Michelle Burchell. I have the utmost respect for her. She could change that if she came up with something that was that I deemed bullshit. I am not against Michelle Burchell.
Okay.
I'm in favor of her getting reelected. I think she's the most approachable person in our government right now.
Yeah.
And she's open and honest and fair. And she's not taking sides. She's just telling it the way that it is. I'll tell you what happened in my last election, and I don't want to get her in any trouble, but this is true. She had COVID. She was home. She would text me and say, they're going to be sending out another 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 ballot votes that have been tabulated and counted. They're going to be releasing them in a half an hour. Keep your eyes open on the website to find, to see it. I had no way of knowing, because they were just dropping batches of ballots at different times. But she was very helpful and didn't give me any secret information, just that the ballots were being tabulated and the answers were being made public.
Cool. Well, we get that one squashed then.
Very great lady. I have the utmost respect. The Board of Supervisors, that's one of the best decisions they've made since we moved in this area.
Right on. One question from a listener is, basically there have been legislators that have put in effort toward election reform laws, but if the governor refuses to sign any of them, how does that make a difference? Can those laws get passed without the governor's approval?
Yes, they can if you have 2/3 majority, which we don't. We have a 1-vote majority in the House and a 1-vote majority in the Senate.
Okay.
And so you can't override a veto. What's been done is that the legislature can refer some things, some matters, to the people as a proposition, an initiative on the ballot. And so what they're doing is they're going to the people instead of going through the governor, because the governor had vetoed more bills than any other governor in the state history. And so the legislature is very frustrated because they've done their job. They've come up with better laws and ways of fixing some of these problems, but the governor isn't on board, and as a result, she just won't hear any of it. So go to the people. Give the people a chance to make a decision. It's going to mean between that and the Democrats are trying to amend the Constitution, which is too easy. You only require a 50% plus one vote to amend the Constitution on the ballot. So the Democrats are trying to use that in order to get things through, like ranked choice voting that they want. They know the legislature won't pass it right now with the balance the way that it is. Governor Hobbs has said that she wants to do everything in her power to make sure that the Democrats take the majority in the House and the Senate, which will make it even more difficult to get legislation through. But yes, you can do it. The better way to do it, I think, is to go around the rules and go around the governor and go to the people, put it on the ballot.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of things legislatively referred over the years. One of them was women's suffrage. I don't know if you knew this. Arizona had women voting before the United States did.
I didn't.
They passed it here in, I think it was 1910, and we weren't even a state till 1912.
Yeah.
They couldn't vote in the federal elections, like for Senate, because we weren't a state yet. But they could vote on local and statewide races. So,
Okay.
you got to think back. I don't know if you saw the series Yellowstone.
I haven't seen all of it, no. But I'm trying to think of how, if we weren't a state until 1912, what governmental authority passed the allowance for women to vote in 1910? Or was
Territorial government.
So it was like county type stuff?
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much. Counties were pretty much in charge, but there were territorial elections.
Cool.
And what's interesting, the reason I mentioned Yellowstone is that this is about a family that moved from Tennessee, and they came out west. They went to Oregon, and they got waylaid in Montana on the way, and they settled there. But if you saw that, you saw some people that went through some really hard times coming across the country. There were thieves, Caucasian thieves that were trying to beat them out of everything they owned. There were Indians, Native Americans, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
that were making it. You put your life in your hands to come out here. There were a lot of outlaws. There was a lot of problems. And for a woman that was living out here prior to 1910, it was a tough life. And the suffragettes here, they wanted to vote, and they weren't going to take no for an answer. And they were serious, and they pushed it through. And the people, we voted for the I think it's the 19th Amendment, the women right to vote. They got the right to vote on the nationwide basis the same day that the bill was introduced. They introduced it and approved it, both houses, signed by the governor the same day. So people in Arizona are big on women getting the right to vote, and I have no problem with that.
That's great. What were the things that people lied about in the last election?
Well, mainly one of the big lies was how long I had been here. They were minimizing the number of years I'd been here. And the thing about being from California, he wants to make it just like California. And that was never in my mind. That was never anything that I said. Um, they tried to play on the fact that I was a lawyer, which some people don't like lawyers. I don't like lawyers, but I happen to be one. And once again, it's a category that once you put people in a category, there are bound to be exceptions to the general rule, and you're going to miss it on some people. In my case, trying to categorize me is very difficult, as you could tell from this whole interview.
Yeah, it's great.
Put me in a category, and I'll show you. Ask me the specifics, and I'll tell you why I don't think that that's really the way it should be. But I'm an open book. I'm not trying to hide anything. And those are the main thing was that I was from California and that I wasn't really about Arizona. That the specifics. That's basically all that I remember at this time. But it felt really bad because I was hearing one of my opponents on the radio repeat over and over and over again that I'd only been here this amount of time, that I was trying to make this like California. That's wrong. That's a lie. And that guy is in office right now. And that's the seat I want to take from him because he doesn't belong there.
Well, people say anything to get the seat, right?
Well, some people do.
Yeah, some
This
people.
people doesn't. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you the way I see it, even if it means I don't get your vote.
Right.
But, my hope is that you'll see through it. You'll see the sincerity. You'll see that it is who I am. And I will fight like hell for the people of Arizona, for the people of Legislative District 1. And
well, I think I don't care that you're from California. I think that you're really knowledgeable. You have really great perspectives on a lot of the issues that a lot of people here care about. So thank you very much for coming on here and being open about all that.
It's my pleasure. If I get just a second to sum things up, I'd really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
My name is Steve Zipperman. I'm running for the Arizona State Senate from Legislative District 1, which is all of Yavapai County, basically, and a little bit of Coconino. And I am sincere. I'm a veteran. I'm a patriot. This is my country, damn it, and they better not try to take it away from me. And I'm willing to fight to the death. If I was willing to do it at 17, I'm sure as hell willing to do it at my age now. I was gambling with a lot more years back then. And I'm more fervent in my beliefs now. And I believe this is a great country. We can recover from this, but we have to change our way of thinking and our way of doing things. And we need to be engaged. People need to vote. They need to make the effort to learn what the candidates are all about, what their positions are on the issues. And I'm an open book. If you have additional questions and you're not just harassing me, but you want to talk about it, my phone number is 928-263-8575. And, I hope you don't abuse that because I'm sincere. If you have issues and you want me to know what they are and maybe be able to do something about it in the Arizona State Legislature, I'm there for you. And I would really appreciate it if you took the time to visit my website, votezipperman.com. Thank you very much, Andy. I really have appreciated this opportunity, and you're very thorough in the questions that you ask. I appreciate that more than you know.
Thank you, Steve. And that's a wrap. If you haven't yet, go over and hit the follow button, the like, the subscribe, whatever it is on the platform you listen to. Leave me a review or a rating. It helps us out a lot and helps me to be able to give you guys better content, especially if you leave a comment or give me guest recommendations, things like that. Have a great day.